Just bear with me here one moment. We are just checking to make sure that I am live on Instagram, because the new feature is that my Instagram followers can actually see what we see here on Talk Talk Live. We have, yes, indeed, yes, our crack technical staff here is viewing us here live on Instagram as well. So that is the new feature that we have here, ladies and gentlemen. New camera, number one. Number two, new angle, number two. And number three, you can hear me live here on Talk Talk Live, live on IG and YouTube for real. We don't have a separation between church and state here. Church and state are now one, as you can clearly see. I don't know if there's any chaos that will ensue from that, but again, we are here on Talk Talk Live, live on IG and YouTube. Like, subscribe, comment on the road to 1,000 subscribers, and I think we're going to get 1,000 subscribers much quicker with this method. So thank you very much for joining me here on Talk Talk Live, live on IG and YouTube. And yes, we're going to get underway with the Diddy trial recap. Now I'm just wearing my kit here on. I'm just doing checking one more time. Are we live on YouTube as well here? We are live on YouTube. Yes, we are live on YouTube, and we are live on Instagram. We have confirmation. Let's see if we have live on Instagram yet. We're just checking on that to see if you are live on Instagram. If you can see me live on Instagram, do let me know if you are in my audience here. And yeah, we will set forward with things anyways. But if not, we will have to work out the kinks. We build it as we fly it from here, ladies and gentlemen, as the great Kevin Samuels once said. So let's just get into the YouTube video here as we go back to YouTube on my full camera here. Bang. And we're going to go through, yes, to the other side here. We're just checking. We're just still checking to see if we are live on Instagram as well. We are not live on Instagram. And yes, I'm just wondering if I need to. Oh, you can hear me? Oh, well, we're checking the audio. The audio is very good. The audio is indeed very good here on YouTube. But we are still working out the kinks with Instagram. I don't know if I should hook up my video here on phone. Yes, we're going to go on the phone, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go on phone here, so bear with me one moment. We're going Instagram here. We're going live on Instagram here, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to have to work out the kinks a little later on here, so bear with me one moment. So we are back here on YouTube, and we're back on Instagram. So Instagram is back live, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, indeed. And we ready to go here? Yes, very good. So yes. Okay, so again, we're back to usual placement of Instagram and YouTube as we speak right now. So thank you very much for joining me here on Talk Talk Live. We'll soon be back. We'll soon have the kinks worked out, and so we'll be able to do live Instagram and YouTube from our new system here that we have in place. But for now, we're just going to have to go through the usual channels for the moment. Thank you to my crack technical staff we have here available, but unfortunately we can't do it tonight, but we will get it done in future. Tonight was just a test run. So let's just get started here on IG. Thank you very much for joining me here on Talk Talk Live, live on IG and YouTube. Like, subscribe, comment on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Yes, indeed. And yeah, we are live here on Instagram. Yes, we tried to merge the two, but it is yet to be done. So we will get there in due course. But right now, we tried to test it out, so the system wasn't working tonight. But we will get it done this week. Hopefully, tomorrow we'll have it done. But thank you very much for joining me here on Talk Talk Live. Back to our usual surroundings here on live on IG and YouTube. Messing with the new OBS system. So thank you very much for sticking with me here. Sorry for the delay, but we are going to work out those kinks and make sure that they are up and running very, very soon. But for the moment, we have a new system for Instagram. We have a new camera angle for Instagram, new camera for YouTube. And the Instagram is yet to be worked out yet. So, but do bear with us. Thank you very much for joining me on Talk Talk Live. We are back, ladies and gentlemen, here on Talk Talk Live. We're going to get through the Diddy trial, going through the usual channels, ladies and gentlemen. So thanks very much for your patience. Yeah, let's get into it, ladies and gentlemen. Through TMZ, we've been using TMZ as our source. Fair use, fair use, fair use. Since the beginning of trial, they've offered fantastic and succinct summary of the Diddy trial, and we're using them again as a source today. Thank you very much to TMZ for doing this. Fair use, fair use, fair use. And we're going to get into it right now, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado. All right. And thank you very much for joining me here in Talk live on IGN YouTube. And thank you for your patience. We will get those kinks out according to our new system as of this week. So tonight was just a test run, but we're going to get it back online as of tomorrow. So thank you very much for joining me here on Talk Live. Let's get into it with the recap of the Diddy trial, week number 2.
Battery 90%.
Various witnesses. Today they called somebody that, based on the comments we've seen come through on our YouTube channel and our podcast, through our podcast, maybe the most important witness of the trial, a woman by the name of Dawn Hughes. She's a psychologist, and she is here. She took the stand to answer the question, why would Cassie stay? Our comments have been full of...
Okay, so let's just, that is a key component to the prosecution's case, using an expert witness to basically classify a lot of the conditions that Cassie Ventura was going through during her time with Diddy. Let us make sure that we have got our I's dotted and T's crossed here. We're just going to go back to a previous episode to make sure. Yes. Okay, yeah. So yeah, we're good. Yes, indeed. I forgot that indeed. Yes, we're back here. So we're going to go forward with what they had to say here, because again,
I believe it's our YouTube channel and our podcast.
Just stopping here. I believe after this witness, the expert witness, then we get into Kid Cudi. So stay with me here on Talk Live.
Through our podcast, maybe the most important witness of the trial, a woman by the name of Dawn Hughes. She's a psychologist, and she is here. She took the stand to answer the question, why would Cassie stay? Our comments have been full of people who say, if I was in her position, I just would have left. She always had the opportunity to leave, and clearly she did, right? Diddy wasn't holding her by gunpoint, as far as we know. Maybe there's some evidence to come, but wasn't holding her. She could have left. She could have gone to police. She could have done a lot of things, and she opted not to. Dawn Hughes was called to the stand by prosecutors to testify why it is that women in these kinds of situations often don't leave. We've heard about this a million times, right? This is battered women syndrome is a very, very common thing.
That's right. And so just to take one quick step back, the witnesses we've heard to this point are what's called percipient witnesses. And that's a fancy term for witnesses who actually saw Diddy do things, interacted with Diddy. These are eyewitnesses. Fact witnesses. They're people who can testify to the things Diddy allegedly did that he's charged with. Now we've shifted to an expert witness. And you've heard this term before. Dawn Hughes is an expert witness. She's someone who doesn't know Diddy at all. She is just very learned in a particular subject matter that may bear relevance in this case.
And as even more, in this case, she's what's called a blind expert. She has been completely shielded from any testimony in this case.
That's right, and that's key. So she is, the temptation might be for an expert witness to tailor their testimony in such a way that it maps onto the prosecution's case. But you don't want that. That would be biased testimony. So what you have instead is an expert who says, I didn't listen to Cassie's testimony. I have no idea what she said or what her relationship was like. Those 4 days of testimony, I am blind to. I don't know about them. Here's what I know as an expert about abuse victims in general and their behavior. And then she's going to testify.
So again, ladies and gentlemen, this is another key witness to the U.S. Attorney's case, is the fact that, thank you very much for joining me here on Talk Live. We like, subscribe, comment on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Any prosecution's case in a criminal trial, in a personal injury trial, in any trial involving bodily or mental harm, we'll always have an expert witness to verify any of the claims submitted by the prosecution. So the U.S. Attorney has brought in this expert, Ms. Dawn Hughes, and she's a clinical psychologist, just to give a clinical name to all of the mental abuse that Cassie Ventura was suffering during her time with Diddy. And it's very good that the experts here understood that indeed, and clarified that this clinical psychologist, this expert witness, could not hear any of the testimony before she came to the stand. So she is just here to comment on her mental condition. That is it. And clarify a lot of what Cassie Ventura was going to, and not be unduly influenced by any testimony that may have occurred previous to her testimony, if you can understand that. So this happens in every case, every serious matter involving mental hardship, and also any sort of physical suffering. You'll always have some sort of mental suffering as well, and so they bring on expert testimony, be it a clinical psychologist, be it an orthopedic surgeon, be it a TMJ doctor, which is thorough TMJ doctor, just to see what's happening with one's dental records. So any of these experts can be called to witness and give a name, and to verify the injuries, both mental and physical, that happened to, in this case, Cassie Ventura. Let's continue.
She did testify very, I think, credibly. She's been a witness in other big cases: Johnny Depp, R. Kelly, Harvey Weinstein. She said abusive relationships often cause behavior for the victims of abuse to stay in relationships past the time when it is a risk to their safety. And so what she's doing is laying out, this is how they behave. And the jurors are left, can we map on Cassie's behavior, which, not leaving the relationship for 11 years, maps onto this behavior? And I think she did an effective job of that.
She did. I mean, she's a very professional witness, and I mean that in every possible way. This is what she does for a living. She testifies on behalf exclusively of a domestic violence, alleged domestic violence victim. She never testifies on the other side, something that the defense on the cross brought out, that she's never testified on behalf of somebody who has been accused of sexual misconduct. But and
that's a key point there raised by Beckerman and Kaufman, is the fact that this expert witness is indeed has a distinct knowledge of domestic violence issues. So this is not one who is not immune to taking part in such trials and give such expert testimony. She has intimate knowledge and actually specialized knowledge in cases involving domestic violence, including this one, as alleged, and is being prosecuted. Well, it's not being prosecuted for such crimes. Again, this is more of a RICO case, this is more of a federal case, but it's just to verify her records, because again, her testimony would basically map onto more of a state prosecution rather than a federal one. But again, it's just to show that she was coerced into many of these crimes as well through her abuse. So it's just giving, it's just basically verifying that she did suffer abuse in the first place under Diddy, through coercion, through threats, through actual physical abuse. All right, but she's speaking to, again, her mental anguish. All right, thank you very much, and we'll speak. Well, have this continue. Sorry.
He testified that it is common for victims to stay in abusive relationships, that many victims will wait months, even years, before telling anyone what happened to them, and that she labeled a trauma bond can make a victim unwilling to leave, among other information about intimate partner violence. And this is, again, we see this in domestic violence cases all the time.
That's right. And she also said these trauma bonds are so strong that sometimes the victims will defend their captors, or so to speak. So you can see some of Cassie's behavior. There was testimony that she would threaten other people who had witnessed things. There was testimony, there was an audio tape that was played that she may have gotten into a verbal altercation and made some threats towards someone who said, I'm going to leak some of this information about your sex tapes with Diddy and how freaky you guys are. Dawn Hughes' testimony now makes sense of that, at least if the jurors are willing to buy this science. Now, one thing Diddy's defense counsel does did was challenge her credentials. This is the type of science that is not hard medicine. This is not DNA and lab coats and test tubes and beakers.
It's not based on scientific research. It's based on the
Studies.
opinions of a psychologist and the psychiatric community more general.
That's right. This is clinical.
So again, these are what Miss Hughes was referring to was that that Kathy Ventura went through a trauma bond with Sean P. Diddy Combs. So therefore, she felt, well, it was theorized that Kathy Ventura went through so much mental anguish that she often defended Diddy when she was abused. That she felt that she deserved this abuse, and she felt bonded to Diddy through the abuse that she suffered. So again, again, this is more of a theory. This is not really scientific fact. This is something that, this is if you go into the DSM-5, which is the dictionary for psychological issues, then you could see in and of itself this definition of a trauma bond, or this theory of a trauma bond. So again, it has to be board certified and basically peer verified for it to be considered an actual state of mind, an actual state of being that many the term I was trying to refer to was peer reviewed. It has to be peer reviewed. This sort of condition. However, if many of one's peers, many of one's clinical psychologists deem this trauma bond to be an actual mental state of anguish, then it would be considered a more of a mental disorder condition. But again, this is only theory right now. I don't think many peer reviewed clinical psychologists would consider trauma bond to be an actual mental condition. However, and in this instance, I don't know if the defense would have their own clinical psychologist, because many, if the plaintiff, if the prosecution would have their expert witness, their own clinical psychologist, usually the defense would have their own psychologist to refute said claims. So we'll hear about that later in the case, but not right now. Usually, if one gets one expert, there's usually another expert on the other side that counteracts said expert for the prosecution, and that is working for the defense. And so we'll hear about her later, but we're here about Dawn Hughes, clinical psychologist, and she an expert witness for the prosecution. We're hearing that indeed this theory that Cassie Ventura went through a trauma bond with Sean P. Diddy Combs. Let's continue.
Psychology, clinical psychiatry, so it's a little bit looser in some people's minds. And so the defense wanted to make sure to challenge some of her credentials as, kind of junk science. This is very, very common way of attacking someone. The other thing they did, defense counsel said, how many times...
And do remember, the defense will always have their expert to consider, to refute this trauma bond theory, and to say that it is indeed junk science and give it another name of what Cassie Ventura was suffering. But again, that comes in later in the case. Let's continue.
Did you meet with the prosecutors in preparing for your testimony? Now, she is allowed as an expert witness. She has to be told, what do you want me to testify to? I'm a clinical psychologist, but I know a lot of different areas. What do you need?
And by the way, they're not a privileged communication. Obviously,
that's right.
The Cassie could not be asked about her communication with her counsel. But the prosecutors don't have clients. This expert witness is not a client. She has to testify fully about every detail of her conversations with the prosecutor.
That's right, because they're trying to ensure that she is truly a blind witness. What did they talk about during these? I think she said that she met with them 6 times, and that's going to land.
the day of her testimony, including this morning prior to going to court. She talked to them again.
That's right. And so what defense is trying to show the jury is this person met with prosecutors 6 times, including after Cassie's testimony. So they want to plant the seed that she's aware of what she needs to deliver in terms of expert testimony that maps onto the prosecutor's case in terms of how Cassie testified. So I thought they were pretty effective in those challenges, because even if they didn't get her to admit, like, I did hear Cassie's testimony, the jurors are going to have some feelings about her meeting after that.
Yeah. So
So again, very good point raised there by Beckerman and Kaufman. Here is in the fact that indeed the defense tried to refute the evidence of the prosecution there from Don Hughes, saying that indeed you did have an idea for said you did have meetings with the prosecution when you're speaking of Cassie Ventura's testimony, and so you had prior knowledge, and thus this refutes the claim that you were a blind witness being someone who just called to the stand and is knowledgeable of her case, but is not knowledgeable of testimony, and thus is here to give a clinical diagnosis of what Cassie Ventura was going through as being a partner of Diddy and the abuse that she suffered. She allegedly suffered, according to the prosecution. So, again, it's poking holes in the theory of the prosecution that indeed that Cassie Ventura had a trauma bond with Diddy. So, as these guys are saying, they were moderately successful with it. But again, they'll go on to refute said claim further through their own, I'm sure, expert witness going forward, and we'll find that out later in the case when the defense is called to give evidence. Let's continue.
U.S. Attorney Mitzi Steiner confirmed that to the court that Hughes has been retained as an expert witness by one of Combs' defense attorneys in another case. And so I think that was an effort to kind of like, hey, you may claim this person's just in the prosecutor's pocket. Actually, his own defense attorney has hired this woman before in another case.
Yeah, so don't call her junk science. If she's junk science, good enough for the goose, good for the gander.
Exactly. And so that was an interesting point that was brought out. But this is sort of a bit of a pissing contest, right? Yes. About who can, she's testifying that many domestic abuse victims, I don't know specifically about this victim, but many of them cannot leave abusive relationships. So don't look at them and try and cast blame at them. The defense, during their case in chief,
they're going to have
the opportunity to call their own expert witnesses to say, in looking at and they may be more direct about Cassie's testimony, that say nobody's going to say that it's not true at all that abuse victims won't stay with their captors sometimes. Right. We all know that's true. But they're going to say, Cassie, in this case, could have left at any time, and she does not have the hallmarks, the indicia of an abuse victim who would otherwise stay in an abusive relationship.
I think.
And there it said, and there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. So you do have this. The defense has their own chance to call their own expert to refute many of the claims brought up by this expert, Don Hughes, for the prosecution. So again, you're going to hear about that later in the case. They're going to talk about this trauma bond being junk science, and then it'll be left to a jury to decide if indeed a trauma bond was formed in this case, as per theory, as per the DSM-5 definition. So you see what I'm saying? Everybody has their own expert witnesses, and everybody will be able to refute the other side's expert witness, if you get what I mean. Let's continue.
I think you're right. Now, a lot of times these criminal cases will devolve sort of into a battle of experts, and this will end up being just noise to a lot of jurors. Who's to believe? They have a scientist who says this, they have a psychologist who says this. A lot of times it's a bit of a wash. Don Hughes is impressive, but, mark my word, Diddy's going to have impressively credentialed expert witnesses during his presentation of the defense's side.
A really good witness.
Indeed. Yes, Diddy, having a high-powered legal team on his side, will have his own expert, and they will be able to. They will have the chance to refute many of the claims brought up by Ms. Hughes. Let's continue.
This expert witness can cost upwards of $1,500 to $2,000 an hour. The prosecution has resources at their disposal, but don't compare it to what Diddy's resources are. So again, to your point, they're going to be matched step by step by the defense witness.
In your experience, look, you and I are not criminal attorneys. Do experts ever carry the day? I think mostly this type of case, in my opinion, is going to come down to, is Cassie a credible witness? Are all these former personal assistants credible? You do need some of this to sort of close the loop on how can I reconcile Cassie's behavior and staying in the relationship for 11 years, but they're not as critical as I saw Diddy ask me to take 3 guns to go meet Suge Knight.
Yeah, in civil cases they can be, which I tried civil cases, they can be very, almost dispositive. But I think that the importance of the witness here is it's all teeing up closing arguments. You know, we're going to have probably a full day and a half of closing arguments. And in that case, in the closings, what the prosecution is going to try to do is say, here are the elements of the crime. Here are each of the witnesses who have testified to the elements of the crime, and try and sew it up that way. And then, because Cassie's such an important witness, say, and you heard testimony from the experts who explain exactly why she didn't leave. She didn't leave because she was terrorized and traumatized for years by this man, and you heard these expert witnesses testify. That's why she didn't leave. So you need the prosecution in their closing to be able to rely on a witness to make that claim. And the defense similarly is going to say, yes, it's true that some victims don't leave, but you heard our expert witness say that wasn't the case here. So
Right.
Don't be fooled. Don't have the wool pulled over your eyes. That's not what happened here.
Yeah, and I want to make
Great points raised there by Beckerman and Kaufman. Yes, experts are there indeed to help lay the foundation for a prosecution and defense's closings. All right, their closing statements, and really lay the foundation to say this is what happened. The prosecution will say that Cassie Ventura went through this abuse. She saw these certain things. She was a part of. She saw a criminal organization in action, a RICO case in action through these certain acts according to the RICO statute, and as a result, Diddy was a part of a criminal was a head of a criminal enterprise, and thus he should go to jail for yay amount of years. Same thing, and the defense will refute that, saying, "Okay, these are our experts. This is our case. These are people who are refuting that statement, and thus, due to these experts and due to these witnesses saying the contrary, there is no criminal enterprise." Do you get it? Okay, so it's there to tell a story, to help to tell a story, put it together, and it's all about which is the more believable story to the jury. Understood? Let's continue.
one more point before we leave this topic entirely. Cassie's testimony was explosive last week, and the sequencing of this is critical, right? They just still have all of that in their mind pretty fresh. The jurors remember her testimony. Then you bring in the expert to contextualize it, and then you get back to your case of bringing in the various gigolos and hired sex workers. You won't really need the experts on that type of case. This is really all about Cassie and any victim testimony.
Speaking of sort of sex shaming, I guess as it were, George Kaplan, another former executive assistant to Diddy, called himself an executive assistant, also testified. Pretty redundant testimony to what we heard yesterday. He would come and set up the room prior to the freak-offs. He would then have the unfortunate task of cleaning up the room after the freak-offs.
Yeah.
Too much detail about what that entailed, except he removed a lot of Gatorade bottles and baby oil bottles.
He set things up. He said he also cleaned up the rooms afterward.
Yeah.
He said whenever we would spot something in the room that could be embarrassing to Mr. Combs, he said one time there was a brown residue in the sink. Who knows what it was? Maybe it was drugs. They would clean it up so that hotel workers didn't come in and snap photos and leak.
We didn't want photos being leaked. This is, there's a lot of criticism over the last few days about how do these specific witnesses, why are they essential to proving any element of the case? That was especially true, I think, today with George Kaplan, because I don't think that any of his testimony was essential to the case. It all seemed pretty redundant. It seemed
cumulative with the other assistants.
It seemed like, right, they were piling on kind of just to show that he was really freaky. They're obviously trying to, as is the right, put it in the jury's head that this is a very strange guy capable of untold horrors.
Yes.
But I don't think that his testimony really went to that.
One interesting sideshow with George Kaplan was he came in initially and said he said, I'm going to plead the fifth. I don't want to testify in this case. I'm worried about self-incrimination. What happened was he, in court, signed...
Not in front of the jury.
Not in front of the jury, right. Not in front of the jury. Signed an immunity order. And the reason for that, just for people who are curious about why that transpired, once the judge signs an order that says you're immune from incriminating yourself, we're not gonna try you for anything that you testify about, it sort of takes away that Fifth Amendment right in a way, so that the judge can then say, now you've been subpoenaed, you no longer ever worry about self-incrimination. If you don't testify, I can hold you in contempt. There's actually a federal rule of evidence. If you don't testify, I'll cuff you and I'll send you to jail, because that's no longer a risk. An interesting side piece of how trials work like this.
Just before we get to comments.
So again, George Kaplan was, he brokered a deal with the prosecution by saying that in exchange for my testimony, I will be immune from any sort of prosecution. So therefore, didn't have to invoke his Fifth Amendment right. But again, as these guys were saying, as Kaufman and Beckerman were saying, his testimony wasn't exactly evocative. It wasn't exactly groundbreaking. It wasn't exactly of any sort of great import. And so, as they were saying, it's more of a piling on of witnesses. He saw things and did things for Diddy that would showed that indeed that he was having these free coughs, that he was indeed a part of a criminal enterprise, and thus should add further evidence to the fact that Diddy indeed indeed should be charged under RICO in terms of being the head of a criminal organization. Let's continue.
Tomorrow, the first witness after George Kaplan, he didn't finish today. George Kaplan is going to testify in the morning. The next witness, according to prosecutors, Kid Cudi.
Kid Cudi, stay tuned.
All right, go ahead.
All right, couple questions we've got from Enhanced Creators. Could this case be a lot shorter than 2 months at this pace? Great question. Why is this taking so long? I have one answer, and then I want to hear what Jason has to say. This is a case that needs to be built brick by brick. There's no smoking gun. They're not just trying to prove one murder. They're trying to prove that Diddy ran a criminal enterprise. It takes a lot of witnesses. You got to have a lot of former employees who were told to do misdeeds. And no one of them, and as Harvey has been arguing, this doesn't seem like racketeering because this can be explained away. He was just freaky. You need to build this by painting a picture, and that just takes time. You have a lot of witness testimony.
There's no way it's going to be too short. If it is, it's going to be a day or two. It's not going to be a long period of time. As with all things in life, the amount of work and the amount of witnesses will expand to fit the allotted time. Here we have 2 months of allotted time. Lawyers love to hear themselves talk. They're going to talk. Also,
it's a complicated case.
It's a very complicated case. A lot of witnesses, expert witnesses in particular, take a long period of time, and juries need a lot of breaks because it's very dense testimony. You're also going to have court closed. You have court closed. Court is dark on Friday and again on Monday for the holiday. So it's not like you're going to have 2 straight months of testimony. You're going to have these days, and then the judge, as we talked about before, he has other obligations to other cases. He probably has 200 cases happening at any one time. This is one, the primary one, the only one that has trial on right now. But he's got other court duties to take care of. It's not just a matter of running through these witnesses. You're going to see it's been a pretty brisk pace for the last 2 weeks, I will say. You're going to see it slow dramatically.
I think that's right. I think that's
very good points raised there by Beckerman and Kaufman, in the sense that, yes, this is going to be a long trial. Strap in. This is not something that's going to be over within a couple of weeks. This is going to take a couple of months. Most, as they were alluding to, most RICO cases take a long time because it takes a long while to establish a criminal enterprise, to establish for the prosecution of criminal enterprise. See the John Gotti case. That took months on end in and of itself as well. And so, do note that there are going to be days that witness finish off quick, and there are going to be days that witness finish off will take longer. And there'll be a lot of grandstanding in certain times of the lawyers as well. And also do note that indeed we are pretty much caught up as of today with the case because there was the Memorial Day weekend. So they had the Friday off and the Monday off. So that only prolongs the case even further. And again, the judge may have other activities within the Circuit Court of New York to deal with, and so there'll be delays here and there. So listen, litigation is a very contentious, slow-moving process. It's like turning around a cruise ship. It's not something that that happens automatically as if you're in a speedboat. Cruise ship takes a while to turn around, and this will take a little while to finish in and of itself. So do be patient, ladies and gentlemen, because it's going to be many witnesses before we get to the end. But again, hopefully the end will be in sight within the next couple of months. Let's continue.
That's right. Let's go to Stoner Mom. It says, he's a bad guy. He should have took the plea deal. Now, this is referencing that before the trial started, there were reports that the prosecutors made a plea deal to Diddy that his team looked at, his defense counsel advised him on, and he rejected. He didn't want it. My sense is that plea deal was not very friendly. I think the prosecutors think they have a very strong case. They're only going to offer him to mitigate their own risk of not getting a conviction. I think they feel pretty confident they can get a conviction on Diddy. So it's probably just too far apart. Diddy wants no time. They probably wanted a lot of time, and that's why we have a trial.
There's no way Diddy was insisting on no time. He knows he's going to have to serve time. I mean, the prosecutors would be raked across the coals if it'd be a political fiasco if they gave him no time. He had to serve a number of years in prison, and he thinks his chances of winning are good enough. And
like any deal, they're just too far apart. They couldn't come to a meeting of the minds.
Right.
Yeah, Diddy wasn't going to stay in jail for long, people. He wasn't going to go. I'm sure if he did a deal, he would have a minimum 5 years in jail. And again, Diddy really didn't want to do all that time. So he said, you know what, I'm going to risk it. I'm going to push the vote out and say, you know what, we're going to go for trial. We're going to go for trial. As again, in these sort of deals, when the two sides are too far apart, at the end of the day, they can't get a deal done. Trial is the only option. So here we are. Let's continue.
Stellar says, if Kid Cudi's car really blew up after Diddy said he would make it explode, how would they prove that?
Well, we're going to find out.
We're going to find out.
Kid Cudi tomorrow is going to be huge. I mean, pardon the pun, explosive testimony from Kid Cudi is coming. He's going to testify about what he knows about his car blowing up.
There's going to be hearsay objections across the board because he can say, my car blew up, and then they're going to say, okay, why do you attribute that to Diddy? Well, Cassie told me. Objection, hearsay.
Right. But also, Diddy is not on trial for blowing up a car, so they don't have to close the loop that it was definitely Diddy. They have to just plant the seed in the jury's mind with enough evidence. I mean, if we have statements of Diddy that, you know, he said specific things, those are going to be admissible. And so
I'm interested in the body language of Diddy towards Cudi, because this is a guy who we've heard testimony when Cassie started dating in 2011. He despised him so much. He wanted to hurt him, wanted to blow up his car. If you believe any of that, how's he going to respond to him when this guy walks in the courtroom? I think the jurors are going to be eagle-eyed looking at Diddy.
Can't wait.
Bezo Lego says, when does the defense get their moment to defend him?
All right, so the prosecution is going to complete their case in chief probably, I'm guessing, 3 to 4 weeks in. And you will hear, as you've heard on television before, the prosecution rests, at which point the defense will then have the opportunity to call their first witnesses. They will run through all of their litany of a dozen or 2 dozen witnesses over the course of the next few weeks. The prosecution will then have an opportunity to call additional rebuttal witnesses. The defense will have an opportunity to potentially call rebuttal witnesses.
This is why it takes so much time.
This is why it takes so much time. The judge does keep a judge who keeps a tight lid on the courtroom. He's pretty good enforcing the time commitment, so he'll limit the rebuttal witnesses, but that's the way it's going to work. You got to wait for the prosecution to to finalize their case in chief, get all their evidence in. They will rest, and then the defense will call the first witness.
That's exactly right. And we'll end with a comment from.
So good point raised there, ladies and gentlemen. So indeed, as I stated previously, this is going to be a pretty lengthy trial. So don't expect anything to happen. I would say this is going to stretch into I would say deep summer. We started in May. I say, for prosecution and defense, it'll go till July. I think it'll go through the month of June. And I say into July, I think both sides will rest. But again, there's a chance that the prosecution may bring in more witnesses. And if they do, then the defense will bring in more witnesses themselves. And then we'll probably get closing arguments. I would say mid to late July. So do remember, this is going to be a lengthy trial. There are more twists and turns to be had, and the prosecution has just begun their examination in chief. So there are more witnesses to come. So do remember that going forward. Let's continue.
From Monkey Man, he said, been listening to this on my way to work each day on Spotify. Love the updates. Well, we're having a great time doing the podcast. It's very interesting to sort of delve into more details than we can do on the other shows. And
thanks for mentioning Spotify. We're available anywhere you get your podcast. Listen to the podcast. We love it when you do. Also on YouTube as well under, I think it's TMZ's Behind the Bar podcast.
That's exactly right. See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Thank you very much to Beckerman and Kaufman here. Let me make sure I got the experts right. I do not want to behind the bar experts. GNC hosts. There we go. Bing, bing. It is. Am I right? Am I right? Am I right? It is Beckerman and Kaufman. Yes, my memory serves me well. Indeed, it is Beckerman and Kaufman. A plus for me. So it is. So again, Beckerman and Kaufman doing wonderful work in these YouTube streets, especially recapping the trial and and in such a succinct and expert way. So shout out to them. We're going to go to the next day, ladies and gentlemen, the big day. That is the prosecution bringing forward Kid Cudi. Now, next to, I would say, Cassie Ventura, this is probably the more explosive witness that the prosecution have available to them. Cassie's mother also gave some pretty salacious testimony herself, but I would say next to Kid. I would say next to Cassie Ventura herself, Kid Cudi. He allegedly endured a lot from Diddy, and his testimony was well and truly expose material. He really, was quite. It's quite entertaining and quite a controversial testimony in and of itself. So we're going to get right to it here on Talk Live through the trial of Diddy, TMZ, Diddy in court, day 14, ladies and gentlemen. And that will bring us up to date with things. Let me make sure we are up to date here. I believe we are. Yes, I believe we are. Yes. That will be the last day witnesses. And then we'll catch up again on Thursday. We'll have another show as of tomorrow night. We'll go back to our usual content. And then Thursday, we're going to finish up with another recap of Diddy. So let's get into this here with TMZ Live. Give me 1 second. Let's cue it up. Oh, there we go. Here you go.
Day 14 of the Diddy trial, the prosecution's star witness for the last couple of days has been Capricorn Clark, Diddy's former assistant, who was tasked by Diddy, among other things, with managing Cassie's image and her brand. Her testimony, Derek, I think the through line in her testimony is that this is a man who was willing to threaten people who he didn't like. Specifically, he threatened in her presence, said that he was going to go kill Kid Cudi at one point. And number two, his henchmen, the people that worked for him, threatened to kill Capricorn Clark if they found out that she had been stealing some jewelry from him, I guess it was. Give us sort of the umbrella view here. The umbrella of this, what did her testimony say?
Yeah.
What does it mean for Diddy?
I mean, Capricorn Clark has been a fascinating witness because we've heard from previous assistants and we've heard from a couple who have said, I procured drugs for Diddy. I set up hotel rooms and I would book hotel rooms. I would get, the baby oil ready for the freak-offs and so forth.
Yeah.
So we've had a lot of testimony about that. Capricorn Clark is different because she was very close to the operation and she was also close to Cassie at periods of time. And she is sort of a link between the organization, Bad Boy and Diddy's enterprises, and all of the misdeeds that he's alleged to have done. The Kid Cudi episode comes up again because Kid Cudi, we know, has testified that he thinks Diddy firebombed his car. He was disoriented, was called back to his house one evening where Capricorn Clark actually alerted him to the fact that Diddy was in his house at the moment. She goes more into that episode, says that, when Cassie first started dating Cudi, she helped her along. She would stay with her. She said, look, if you're going to start dating this guy, you need a burner phone. You can't do this on Bad Boys phones. She sort of helped Cassie sort of navigate what must have been a very sort of scary and fraught relationship with Kid Cudi. She said that with Cudi.
Oh, once she started dating.
Once she started dating Cudi, it was a very.
She had to help navigate that so that Diddy didn't find out. So they were conspiring to let her have a relationship with Kid Cudi without Diddy finding out.
Right, through burner phones and so forth. She says that Clark testified that early in the morning of December 22nd, 2011, Diddy found out. and starts banging on her front door. She says she opened it. He's holding a gun, and he said, "Why didn't you tell me?" To his employee, Capricorn Clark. Who is Scott? Now, Scott is Kid Cudi's real name, Scott Mescudi, and he's the guy who's on the stand. And she says that at that point, Diddy said, "We're going to go kill this guy." With a weapon in hand, and that's when all of these confrontations started taking place that Cudi has already testified about.
That is Capricorn Clark. If you see her on Talk Live here on IG and YouTube, you're looking at Capricorn Clark on YouTube. Let's continue.
Did break into the home, the firebombing of the car, and
so after they go, he goes to her house, says we're going to kill this guy, and it's after that all this other stuff started happening.
Right. So they go to the house. Remember, there wasn't a confrontation that night.
So again, Capricorn Clark works with Diddy. Capricorn Clark is my J's lost. Capricorn Clark is the person who tried, who was Cassie's assistant during her time with Bad Boy and Sean P. Diddy Combs Enterprises. Capricorn Clark is indeed the one who tried and failed at hiding a lot of the relationship between Cassie and Kid Cudi by using burner phones, by being very clandestine, by trying to play smoke and mirrors with things in terms of getting Diddy to let's just get this back here. Yes, indeed. I'm sorry. Yes, in terms of getting Diddy to to not see what had gone on in prior, because again, if you remember prior testimony, Cassie's testimony with regards to Kid Cudi, it happened during a break between Diddy. This affair happened on a break between Diddy and Cassie. And this was one of, I believe, 2 affairs that she had, one with Kid Cudi and another with Michael B. Jordan, if you did not know. So, again, Diddy, did catch wind of the fact that Cassie was seeing Kid Cudi behind his back, and, again, you heard what happened. He went to the front door, banged on it, and basically wanted to go out and kill Kid Cudi and admonish was it Capricorn Clark for hiding this relationship between Cassie and Kid Cudi. All right, this affair between Kid Cudi and Cassie. Let's continue.
Yeah. Kid Cudi called the police. Yeah. So Diddy left the house, according to the testimony. He left before he could have that physical confrontation. And then Capricorn Clark was ordered, according to her testimony, by Diddy to make sure this guy didn't talk, to make sure this guy didn't sort of give up Diddy and say he was behind these break-ins and all of this violence. So she is the linchpin of the government's case, because Kid Cudi's testimony is now being challenged as, rank speculation, prejudicial to the jury. Who knows who firebombed the car? There's no physical evidence. He just thinks Diddy, sort of firebombed his car, and they want to prevent the jurors from connecting those dots through Kid Cudi. Well, now they've got a precipient witness.
So we've talked so much over the last week about, do these various acts of criminality amount to a RICO case? Here you have, and we always said, it doesn't really look and smell like what you'd expect from a RICO case, this sort of mob involvement. This looks, smells, tastes, quacks like a RICO case.
It really does. And in the beginning of her testimony, she says she was interviewed by Diddy, and they took a walk in Central Park. And Capricorn Clark has had a sort of past working in the industry. She had worked with Suge Knight at Death Row Records. And she says when she brought this up to Diddy, he said to her, "Well, we'll see what happens with that. I may need to kill you." That was his response. Now, on the stand, they asked her, "Did you take this seriously, or was it sort of a casual joking comment?" She said she took it very, very seriously. As a matter of fact, we here at TMZ then talked to Suge Knight, who learned of these threats from Capricorn after she left Diddy's employment. And he says, "Yeah, I know Capricorn. She was scared for her life. Diddy is a man known for violence."
This is a job interview when they went through walking through. You and I interviewed you for this job. Had I made that statement to you, you would have been like, "I think I'll go elsewhere."
And you certainly never put me through a polygraph test, which is another thing she testified to. She says the trust was so sort of fractured in their relationship that at one point Diddy accused her of stealing some jewelry from him, had 2 goons goons take her to a dilapidated house, hook her up to a polygraph machine. She was nervous and said, what happens if this goes wrong? And the lines start jumping, and they said you might end up in the East River. So now we're at a point where this sounds actually like a mafia enterprise where there are explicit threats to people's harms of throwing them in rivers. This is how the mafia operates.
So he
Very. Again, we underestimated the Capricorn Clark here and her witness testimony. She's quite open and honest about the fact that, Diddy used coercion, Diddy used threats, Diddy used violence in order to get his way. And this all begets being the head of a criminal enterprise. So we are, and she can recall the fact that indeed Diddy allegedly, was not pleased with the relationship, the affair between Cassie and Kid Cudi, and used very violent means in order to end it, in order to stop it. Now again, this was seen as urban folklore for a while, but now it's being brought to light that this was indeed true. That indeed Kid Cudi was indeed was indeed allegedly the victim of arson through some means. Some say allegedly through Diddy. Again, it's yet to be proven if that's the case, and will never be proven here. But again, it's all of Capricorn Clark's evidence, and not only that, her evidence giving note to the fact that Diddy was indeed at war with Suge Knight, even post the deaths of Biggie Smalls and Notorious B.I.G. So again, we are. Capricorn Clark is laying the foundation for indeed this being a criminal enterprise. She's part of the foundation, and indeed a big part of it in and of itself. Let's continue.
Again, just to break down her testimony, you've got Diddy as the head of this thing. He liked to be called the king. He was called the king. He then would order his goons to do things like give people polygraph tests, and it's hard to know how in jest the threat was of her in the East River, because it sounds like maybe a jokey comment. I mean,
it does.
Serious but jokey, but
tone matters.
But tone matters, and the jury's going to have to sort of decipher that. But given the fact that she knows him to be prone to threats of great violence, and there have been other allegations that not necessarily have come to light yet in the case that he committed great acts of violence over the years. And she would have known this. It's hard not to take those things seriously. They did bring her out, according to her testimony, bring her out to a warehouse with, like you said, goons, basically employees, and hook her up to a lie detector test. If she fails, it's not going to be like we're going to terminate your employment, or they would have done that at Bad Boys' offices.
That's right.
This had to be. There was a reason they were taking out to a warehouse in the middle of nowhere.
Now, you bring up her termination. Eventually, she was terminated, and so on cross-examination, Mark Agnifilo had a field day with her, because they're going to try to frame Capricorn Clark, whose testimony was absolutely devastating, if you believe it, as a jilted ex-employee who has an axe to grind with Diddy. The other approach they took was, look, she has issues with Cassie. At some point, she was helping her career along, but there was some professional jealousy. She testified on cross that that Cassie was the bad boy artist who was most coddled to, basically, that they were trying to launch the most between a certain period of time, and that while she's beautiful and has some talent, she said she's not really talented.
She has talent, but not talented.
She said, I think of talented musicians as Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston. This is a girl who could sing in the studio, but they put so much money and investment behind her. It sounded like there was some professional jealousy. Why is she getting all the attention?
In addition to the professional jealousy, she also said that Cassie got, quote, a little more bravado as being his girlfriend the longer it lasted. She went from being more of a sweet model to a feisty girlfriend. She testified that when Cassie's live performances weren't great, she returned to work in 2016. Clark said that her drug use was preventing her from the opportunities that were before us. So basically, she's talking about a girl in Cassie who was getting all of the perks from dating Diddy. not as talented as the other people that maybe could have gotten more attention.
You can imagine this.
Being a little bit bitchy, it sounds like.
And this happens in office settings. I don't know that this is entirely unfounded, because you can imagine the boss hiring a hot secretary.
Well, he's sleeping with the hot secretary too.
That's right.
In this case, yeah.
And letting them get away with things at work, not really holding them to the same standards as you hold other employees, and that resentment brewing amongst the rest of the workforce. Capricorn sounds like she was on that side.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I said
doesn't mean
sleeping
she
with
was
it.
lying, but it is worth telling the jury.
I didn't mean to diminish it. They had a really long-term relationship, she and Diddy. So it's the music industry, maybe the movie industry, the only things that could give rise to this, right? Where there's a boss and there's an employee, and they're openly sleeping together, and the boss is openly trying to get the employee jobs, and to the detriment of the other employees who maybe want to have that level of fame.
Exactly.
And then Cassie, according to Capricorn Clark, starts to get a little bit too big for her britches, and being like, I'm his girlfriend, I'm not just some talent you can tell what to do.
Right, and here's what's interesting: the sort of trial within the trial.
So again, yeah, I mean, as Beckerman and Kaufman are saying here, listen, Diddy, Diddy's defense did a great job at exposing Capricorn Clark being the jealous employee of Cassie Ventura, in the sense that, she was getting all the perks of being Diddy's girlfriend and getting all these certain favors that were bestowed upon her, all these certain opportunities, all these certain open doors that were open to her instead of somebody more talented. And it showed I think the prosecution allegedly did a great job of showing that she was a disgruntled employee who thought that Cassie was very lucky to be Diddy's girlfriend, because if not, then she would not get the opportunities that she did. So, good on the prosecution for exposing that. But again, did it temper down some of her explosive testimony regarding to Diddy being an organization of a criminal enterprise, and his involvement with Kid Cudi and his involvement with Suge Knight? Well, that remains to be seen. Let's continue.
What's going on? Remember, they had to have a little bit of kid gloves when you're dealing with Cassie on the stand. She's a pregnant woman. She is a survivor of domestic violence, basically by Diddy's admission that he was jealous.
The
and
video,
and of course the elevator video. With a witness like Capricorn Clark, who worked in the industry, had worked for Suge, is a little more sort of, she didn't suffer domestic violence at the hands of Diddy. She was an employee who said she was threatened, but she also had a nasty termination from there. They could really take the gloves off, and from what it looks like, Agnifilo did a good job on cross-examination of at least raising the specter of her having a bias against Diddy. And I think that was effective as far as it goes. On the side of the prosecution, I think she was extremely effective in connecting dots from Kid Cudi's testimony, which at its core is a guy who says, yeah, my car was firebombed, but I don't know who did it. I think Diddy's a liar when he says he didn't do it, but he doesn't really have a basis for concretely linking Diddy. You now have that witness. You can choose to not believe her if you're the jurors and say she has a bias, but they now have connected that dot.
So you never know how things will land with the jury, to your point. But from what we've seen objectively looking at this, the testimony against Diddy has been pretty devastating.
Yes.
Now, they have not put on their case. The prosecutors actually said that instead of going the full 6 weeks, they estimated their case in chief is going to go 5 weeks. Diddy will then have the opportunity to call his witnesses, and his witnesses are going to paint a very different picture of everything we've heard so far. So there's still plenty of opportunity for him to claw back into this game, but for right now, it really seems like they are doing a terrific job about painting him to be a true monster.
And to be fair,
so yeah, I mean, the defense limited some devil's invitation by showing that Capricorn Clark was indeed a disgruntled employee. However, when it comes to it still didn't, according to Beckerman and Kaufman here, it still did not counteract the very probative and very serious testimony on the part of Capricorn Clark, and connecting the dots that Diddy was indeed a part of a criminal enterprise due to many criminal acts that Diddy allegedly was involved with as being the head of Bad Boy, including his involvement with Kid Cudi, his involvement with Capricorn Clark herself, and also his involvement with Suge Knight. So again, it is there's a bit of mitigation, however, on the part of the defense, but as Beckerman and Kaufman are saying now, it is still a win in terms of this witness for the prosecution, in the sense that in terms of Diddy being the head of a criminal enterprise. Let's continue.
A lot of trials go like this. O.J. Simpson's trial, he looked as guilty as a person could look, and then things start to fall apart. Mark Furman,
almost as guilty as a person could look at the end.
That's true. Yeah, he still looks quite guilty, but defense teams can be very effective, and they can.
Yes.
And I think he's got a good one. I think this is a dream team of sorts for Diddy. So we'll see what their case in chief looks like when they're able to present it.
Yeah, let's go to take some questions. Enhanced Creator
Okay,
says,
before we do that, okay, well, I think we're going to end it there because it doesn't look like there was no recap of any testimony from regarding Kid Cudi. So what we're going to do is we're going to do an audible, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to do the audible. We're going to go to law and crime here. And we're going to, yes, law and crime. We're going to go to the Kid Cudi section here. And yes, here we go. Always have a backup, ladies and gentlemen. Always have a backup. Yes, indeed. So let's go into, well, we got a little bit of a lengthier time here, but let me see. Everything you need to know. The sex trafficking trial. Yes, so we're going to go into law and crime, ladies and gentlemen. As you can see on the headlines here, P. Diddy is leading ceremonies here, and again, they are following this from top to bottom, ladies and gentlemen. So let's get into, yes, let's get into this one here 6 hours ago. Yes.
So as far as the kidnapping allegation goes, that stems from 2011. What do we know that happens in 2011, specifically around December of that time frame? That is when we start to kind of get into the Kid Cudi and Cassie relationship. Obviously, a very huge talking point throughout a lot of this testimony, especially last week, kind of trickling into this week. And so around this 2011 time frame, Capricorn Clark is no longer Diddy's personal assistant. Now she's a global brand director. So she's around 28 years old around this time. But she said around this time frame, she was also working as Cassie's creative director and manager too. So kind of pulling those double roles. And she said as far as that role of being a creative director, it was kind of about maximizing the optics for Cassie. And so as far as just everything with the Kid Cudi incident, Capricorn Clark explained that.
Okay, we're going through the Capricorn Clark section of things here. Let's just go here up to, let's see if we have it here with regards to female dating. Okay, let me just see here. Actually, let me go to Nate the lawyer here. I'm going to do one second, ladies and gentlemen, because I really want to get to Kid Cudi. It seems that TMZ did not do me a solid in terms of finding out about. Let me see if they have anything here, Nate the lawyer. Yes. Let's see here. Give me 1 second, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry I didn't have this queued up earlier. I should have done my research, and that is my bad. Yeah, we're going to have to go back here. Okay, give me 1 second, ladies and gentlemen. Just going back to my sources here. I think, yeah, this is the one I was looking for here, the law and crime section here. Yes. Here we go. Yes. 5 days ago, I'm thinking that this is it here. Yes. So let's get into this here. It's 5 days ago. Yeah, I think this is it here. Yes. 5 days ago. There we go.
Sean Diddy Combs' sex trafficking and racketeering trial is dominating headlines right now, and we have been covering everything going on inside and outside the federal courthouse right here on Sidebar. And with a high-profile defendant often comes high-profile witnesses, victims, celebrities. We have dug into the transcripts from the first several days of Combs' trial to find the celebrities who have been mentioned so far, and maybe we're going to be called to the stand. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Sean Diddy Combs.
That's not the one I was looking for, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me here on YouTube. We're going to renew our live for IG, so give me a second as we move forward here.
It's the burned Porsche that is a key piece of evidence the prosecution is using in the sex trafficking and racketeering trial of Sean Diddy Combs. Rapper Kid Cudi says Combs had something to do with a Molotov cocktail landing in his passenger seat in January 2012. Diddy's defense is saying not so fast. The DNA evidence, they argue, could derail the government's attempt to use this charred car as a smoking gun in trying to convince a jury that Sean Combs is guilty. We're on the case presented by Law and Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Before we get back to this episode of On the Case, I want to bring you a Law and Crime legal alert, because if you received a Depo-Provera birth control shot and you were later diagnosed with what they found, that is the rapper's Porsche damaged from a Molotov cocktail. Yeah, an explosive built with a bottle full of flammable liquid that typically has a cloth inserted to act like a wick. Kid Cudi took the stand last week. He entered the courthouse smoking a cigarette, wearing a leather jacket, and a white t-shirt. Now, Kid Cudi's real name is Scott Miscuddy. He dated Cassandra Ventura, Diddy's ex, the singer known as Cassie, briefly in 2011, and he says that Sean Combs did not like that one bit. Ventura and Combs were in an off-again, on-again relationship that started around 2008 and went to 2018. Kid Cudi testified that he thought, when he was with Cassie, that Ventura and Combs were done. Before we get into how Kid Cudi's car was almost engulfed in flames from a Molotov cocktail, it is important to remind you why an arson case is so important in the government's attempt to convict Sean Combs of racketeering. Arson is one of the predicate offenses under the RICO Act. The government needs to prove at least 2 underlying crimes to be guilty of racketeering conspiracy, and arson is one of those potential underlying crimes. So you can see why a potential burnt Porsche may go a long way in the government's case. The road to that burned Porsche started back when Kid Cudi says he and Ventura first started dating. Kid Cudi testified that he met Cassie at an event in New York in 2008. They also collabed on some music together, and then they briefly dated in 2011. Now, the rapper said as he understood it, Cassie and, quote, Sean Combs had some problems and they weren't dating anymore. But then Ventura told Kid Cudi that Diddy had found out they were dating. Now, Kid Cudi said he was confused because he didn't think that Diddy and Cassie were speaking anymore. He then testified that Ventura asked him to pick her up because she was worried that Diddy was going to show up at Kid Cudi's house because Diddy asked for Kid Cudi's address and she gave that address to Diddy. Now, Kid Cudi then said that Cassie was told by a friend, Capricorn Clark, who was also testifying at the trial. She worked as an assistant to Sean Combs, that Diddy and an associate of Diddy were actually inside Kid Cudi's house because she was waiting in the car outside. Now, this was in December 2011. Kid Cudi said that he called Diddy. He confronted him on the phone about an alleged break-in to his house, and Kid Cudi said he then called the police, who filed a report. Then we get to January 2012, and this is key.
Okay, so before I get to the key point, you can see already here on Talk Talk Live. Thank you very much for joining me on Talk Talk Live on IG and YouTube. Like, subscribe, comment on the road to 1,000 subscribers. We will get the kinks worked out with regards to having Instagram, see what we see here on YouTube. And do apologize, but we're building it as we fly. We have some new technology we have here available. As you can see, a new camera here on YouTube. So do bear with us here as we work things out. And we should be up and running in full within the week. Back to it. As you can see, the threatening behavior from Diddy, alleged threatening behavior from Diddy to Kid Cudi started in December 2010. I think it was December 2011, sorry. December 2011, and it did not stop. Diddy was not happy that Cassie was moving on with Kid Cudi. And Diddy said as much. He did not like the fact that that she was engaging in this affair / relationship, new relationship, and Diddy put it out there, according to testimony, that he was not well pleased, and that if Kid Cudi was still to stay on the scene, there would be serious repercussions. Let's continue.
Kid Cudi said he received a call from his dog sitter that his Porsche was on fire. Now, here are some of the images that the government submitted as evidence of the damage that Molotov cocktail left behind. Kid Cudi said he and Ventura were no longer dating at the time of this fire. Kid Cudi testified that he saw the Molotov cocktail in the front seat of the car and that police were called to his house. In one of the most candid moments of this trial thus far, when asked what his reaction was to his car being set on fire, Kid Cudi replied, "What the?" And you can fill in the blank on that one. Now, Kid Cudi said that he confronted Combs about his car. The two had a sit down to talk about Cassie, the alleged break-in, and what happened to his car. Kid Cudi testified at the end of that meeting. Kid Cudi says he stood up and shook hands with Sean Combs. Quote, "As I was shaking his hand, I said, 'What are we going to do about my car?' I made sure to ask him right when our hands were clasped together, where he couldn't run away, and I could look him square in his eye, and he looked right back at me, a very cold stare, and said, 'I don't know what you're talking about.' I said, 'Okay.' I took my hand from his and he said, 'Wait, I thought we were cool. Is there a problem?' I was like, 'You said you didn't burn my car, right? You said that's your word?' And he said, 'Yeah.' And I was like, 'That's it.'" Cudi said that Combs was very calm during that part of the conversation. Heading into that line of testimony, Cudi had said that he thought Combs had something to do with the break-in and his car being lit on fire based on issues that they were having off of the relationship that he had had for a short period of time with Cassie. On cross-examination, the defense tried to poke holes in what Kid Cudi was saying and to raise questions about whether Diddy would actually have something to do with this alleged arson. The defense...
So again, ladies and gentlemen, as you saw the confrontation between Diddy and Kid Cudi after his car was bombed by a Molotov cocktail. It was serious. What Law and Crime did not bring forth was some of the testimony where Kid Cudi said that that Diddy was indeed sort of like a Marvel superhero villain upon meeting him after the car bombing, and you saw the rest of the meeting there, in the sense that there was Sean P. Diddy Combs stated that he knew nothing of the car bombing, Kid Cudi took it at face value, but deep down he thought that indeed Diddy was behind the crime. And it's alleged that Diddy had said to Cassie or to one of his underlings that he would be out of the country when this Molotov cocktail would be set off against Kid Cudi. Yes, Diddy was not well pleased with Cassie Ventura's affair with Kid Cudi. He and again, as heard from the testimony of Capricorn Clark thereafter, he really went ahead and saw to it that said affair would end quickly. He was not happy with the fact that that Kathy was stepping out of the relationship, but Kid Kid Cudi thought the relationship was over, but that wasn't indeed the case. So again, after they had Kid Cudi and Diddy allegedly through testimony had their meeting, allegedly had their meeting. They shook hands, and again, Diddy said that he was not responsible for the car bombing of Kid Cudi's Porsche. But again, Kid Cudi did not believe him overall. Let's continue.
Pointed out that no one has been charged in this case, even though police were called and the LAFD investigated. They also said that fingerprints and DNA were taken from the scene. Then the defense said to Kid Cudi, quote, "You know that DNA comes back to a female, right?" The rapper responded, "You said what now?" And the defense said, "The DNA comes back to the female." It seemed like that line caught Kid Cudi off guard. This week, the government filed this motion ahead of the testimony of this LAFD investigator they plan to call to the stand. And it seems like they're trying to get ahead of the argument that the defense is going to make in connection to that burned Porsche, that there's no physical evidence that Combs was there or involved, and it was a female's DNA that was taken from the Molotov cocktail, according to the defense. Now, the government said they plan to call the LAFD fire investigator who responded to Kid Cudi's house in 2012, but they wanted to stop the defense from questioning that investigator about DNA. Part of the motion reads, quote, "Investigator Jimenez did not collect the swabs personally, did not perform the testing himself, has no personal knowledge regarding the testing other than what is included in his report and the additional materials, and does not understand and cannot explain to what partial female DNA refers." The government also says the evidence doesn't talk about which part of the glass bottle the DNA was collected from. That was the first issue that was brought up in court Tuesday morning, and the judge overruled the objection, meaning the defense will have their chance to ask the LAFD fire investigator about the DNA and bring up what was partially found on that Molotov cocktail to the jury once again. Combs' trial is expected to last another month at least. He is charged with racketeering, sex trafficking by force, and transportation to engage in prostitution. He has pleaded not guilty. Join us now.
Yes, so there's a quick synopsis of things there with regards to Kid Cudi's testimony. Yeah, that is a twist in the tale that there is on the bottle of which the Molotov cocktail was made, there is female DNA evidence. So therefore, this may exonerate Diddy from responsibility for Kid Cudi's car bombing. Now, again, the prosecution tried to have this expert testimony struck off and eliminated from being introduced into evidence, but it failed. So therefore, we're going to hear from experts from the defense in future that the car that the bottle containing the Molotov cocktail and involved with the Molotov cocktail indeed may not have emanated from Diddy. So it is that is a serious twist in the trail of this, and may win huge points in terms of Diddy's case, in that he was not involved in the criminal enterprise because indeed he wasn't involved in the car bombing of Kid Cudi. So that'll be heard later, but that is a huge revelation with regards to Kid Cudi's testimony. And, I don't think it's very widely reported, the fact that, this evidence has been allowed, and indeed it will be brought up in the defense's evidence in chief. And, and could win huge brownie points for Diddy in terms of his defense of the RICO case. Let's continue.
To talk about this part of this case involving Sean Diddy Combs is Nima Rahmani, former federal prosecutor and president of West Coast Trial Lawyers. Always great to have you on Law and Crime. Thanks for being here. So there's so much attention on this Porsche that was hit with a Molotov cocktail in 2012. It was Kid Cudi's. And the government's trying to argue that Sean Combs was responsible for this Molotov cocktail. How do you do that?
Well, I think there's a few ways you get there. Obviously, you would love if there was some sort of video or an admission, but you don't have that, right? So what you have is this threat. Cassie testified that Combs threatened to blow up Kid Cudi's car. And lo and behold, short time thereafter, a Molotov cocktail hit the Porsche and it was burned. So, I mean, that's certainly circumstantial evidence that Combs was responsible for it, adding to the episode where, he went into Kid Cudi's home, apparently with a gun. And, you have people like Kid Cudi, Cassie Ventura, and Capricorn Clark who have now testified that, Combs was responsible for that incident. Now, obviously, Combs denied it when he was confronted with it, but I think there's certainly enough evidence for the jury to infer that he was responsible for this arson, even if he wasn't the one who directly did it.
How legally, kind of break down how that works, because this case was investigated in 2012. The defense made sure in talking to Kid Cudi that to point out that no one was ever arrested for arson. Sean Combs was never charged for arson. Had this event happened last week and there was evidence of him doing it, he would face a charge, reasonable to believe that he would face a charge of arson. But in this case, it's kind of all this circumstantial evidence to get the jury to believe, if you're the government, that Sean Combs did this. How does that work? Where it's not as if he's ever been charged with arson.
Look, it's circumstantial, but, if I'm the prosecutor, and maybe this is the former prosecutor, just because someone isn't charged doesn't mean that they're not guilty of an offense or that offense isn't an element of another crime. I would say the same thing about the 2016 hotel assault. Combs was never charged for that, but some of this is witness intimidation. Some of it is people who are afraid to speak out. And you heard Cassie testify that she just wanted to get away from the Intercontinental Hotel, and that Kid Cudi was afraid for his own safety, and he did not want to have anything to do with Combs or even Cassie Ventura, for that matter, after this arson incident. So, sometimes if you are a prosecutor or law enforcement and you have victims and witnesses who aren't willing to come forward and testify, that can really tank your case. But that doesn't mean that at some other time, like today during this trial, that crime can't be proven.
Good point right there by said lawyer here. Yeah, just because Diddy was not charged with a crime in both counts in terms of Kid Cudi's car bombing and in terms of the Intercontinental Hotel beating, which was witnessed on video, the fact of the matter is this can all be seen as evidence towards the bigger crime of being a RICO case. So all of it can be admitted as evidence. So even though you don't have a crime on a state level, you can still have a crime on a federal level with regard to this RICO case. So the prosecution will still be counting this as part of its accumulation of evidence against Diddy being the head of a criminal enterprise, if you see what I mean. So even though no crime was committed, it's still an accumulation of misfeasance and bad behavior on the part of Diddy to show that indeed he was a part of racketeering, he was a part of intimidation, he was a part of coercion, arson, and all these predicate offenses leading to a RICO charge. Get it? Let's continue.
And we talked about it a little bit in the lead-in of some of the underlying crimes that then can lead to the racketeering charge that Sean Combs is facing. Just as you're the former prosecutor, why is arson and this Porsche so important when making that argument towards Sean Combs being guilty of racketeering?
Chris, this is why arson is important. There is a way for the government to get to racketeering even if they can't prove sex trafficking. So let's talk about sex trafficking first. Sex trafficking, of course, requires force, fraud, or coercion. There's an argument that the defense has put out that the freak-offs were consensual. There was no force. There was no coercion. And some of the emails and text messages that Cassie sent Combs do seem to support that argument. Now, obviously, I believe that she was coerced, and this is just part of the psychology of abuse. But one of the biggest questions in the case is, well, why did Cassie stay if she was really forced or she was coerced into participating in these sex acts? The reason arson and kidnapping and prostitution and these other offenses are important.
Wait for it. I explained it here on Talk Live just now, but he's leading to this being predicate offenses toward a RICO charge. A RICO conviction. Let's continue.
Is that they are RICO predicate acts. So if the jury believes there's a criminal enterprise, and even if they don't believe the sex trafficking happened, they can convict Combs on racketeering, for arson, for kidnapping, for drug trafficking, for some of these other crimes that don't have to do with sex trafficking if they do believe that the freak-offs were consensual.
And let's talk about this DNA, the partial DNA that the defense brought up when they were cross-examining Kid Cudi. And it seemed like he didn't expect that part of the questioning to come up, that the defense claims that there was partial DNA from the Molotov cocktail, or what was left of it, in the car, and it was a female's DNA. What do you make of that?
You know, it's very possible that a female was responsible for the Molotov cocktail, or it was just an innocent female who was there. You know, all along, Combs said that if something happened to Kid Cudi, it would be by someone else's hand. In fact, he said he would be out of the country. This is testimony from Regina Ventura.
There it is, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, I am glad that the lawyer here did bring that up, in the sense that, yes, Regina Ventura did testify to the fact that Diddy would be out of the country if Kid Cudi's car was, if Kid Cudi was brought to harm, or if Kid Cudi's car was car bombed and through a Molotov cocktail. So the fact that Diddy wasn't there and the car was bombed, it's circumstantial evidence. It doesn't lead to Diddy being a part of the crime in and of itself. But again, it's another predicate act, arson, leading towards Diddy being the head of a criminal enterprise and him landing a RICO conviction. Let's continue.
Cassie's mother, and why she wired the $20,000 to him, because she was afraid for her daughter's safety. And now you have all these individuals saying that, you know, it wasn't necessarily Combs himself who would, you know, do the dirty work, right? It could be a lie detector test. It could be using a security guard. He was running a criminal enterprise. And just like the head of the mob isn't the one who always pulls the trigger for a mob hit, I think the jurors can certainly infer that it was Combs who ordered the arson, even if it wasn't him who did it personally.
And if you're the prosecution, would you be expecting that piece? Because it seemed like Kid Cudi, everything to that point, he was kind of expecting all the questioning, the questions that he was getting, and he was as cordial and calm as a witness can be with some of the language he had when he was on the stand. But do you think the prosecution knew of that DNA test and that was going to come up?
I don't think they knew about it, because Kid Cudi did seem surprised. He certainly wasn't prepped for it. Well, you know, when you're the defense, you can cross on anything. You don't necessarily have to prove that it was a female's DNA. And you can ask, you know, as long as you have a good faith basis to believe that some other DNA was in the car, you can ask a witness about it. That doesn't mean it's true. That doesn't mean we'll ever hear from anyone who conducted the investigation as to whose DNA that was. I mean, again, it's possible, but not necessary. It's certainly something I don't think the government's going to put in, because it wasn't Combs' DNA.
And for the prosecution, now that the judge is allowing the defense, for when this fire investigator takes the stand, they will be able to bring up this DNA, this partial female DNA that they found on it. If you're the prosecution, how do you go about, because I'm sure it's going to come up, and a juror may, you know, you may see a juror start to think, well, maybe Sean Combs isn't responsible for this arson. How do you, as a prosecutor, if you were in their shoes, push back on that and then try to get the jury on track?
I think you got to really talk about the difference between direct and circumstantial evidence. And there's jury instructions on this that really give different examples. And you don't need direct evidence. Circumstantial evidence is entitled to the same weight. So the example that they use in jury instructions is, you know, if you go outside and you see it's raining, you can testify that, you know, it was raining on this particular day. But even if you're inside and someone walks into your house and they're wet, and they have an umbrella, and they have rain boots, you can reasonably infer that it was raining. And here, given all the evidence, the fact that Combs himself made that threat, that he had the motive to go after Kid Cudi, he threatened to kill him. He said he was going to blow up his car. And the fact that that happened, you can infer that it was Combs who at least ordered it. And again, sometime later, years later, apparently there was some sort of vague apology for what happened as well. So I think all that, the totality of the circumstances, do give rise to the conclusion that Combs was responsible. You don't need that direct evidence in the case.
Very good point raised there by the expert lawyer here, in the sense that very well said that Indeed, circumstantial evidence is given the same weight as direct evidence. So therefore, even if you don't see, a great example is even if you don't see it is raining outside, if you see that a person's wet rain jacket, if you see an umbrella, if you see rain boots that are wet, you assume that it was raining outside, that is given weight in terms of evidence. So therefore, even though Diddy may have threatened, according to Cassie's mother, Katie Ventura, may have threatened that Diddy was. Let me just make sure that it is Katie Ventura. I believe it is Katie Ventura. Cassie's friend. Diddy King. I think it is Katie Ventura here. Cassie's parents, Diddy, yeah. Here we go. It's Cassie's parents. So yes, I think it's Katie Ventura. So according to Katie Ventura, when she did say that Diddy threatened that to bomb Kid Cudi's car, the fact that Kid Cudi's car was indeed bombed, and Diddy used threatening behavior to say that he would eliminate Kid Cudi if he did not stop seeing Cassie Ventura, allegedly. This can all be seen as circumstantial evidence that counts against Diddy's case, that leads towards Diddy being the head of a criminal enterprise, which used coercion and arson in order to put forth his exact instructions. So it's important that the lawyer did say that this circumstantial evidence is admissible, and it does carry the same weight as direct evidence. So it still is accumulative against Diddy. It doesn't count. It doesn't count against him. But again, it is still a point to be won for the defense in the sense that there's female DNA on the Molotov cocktail, and Diddy may not be involved in it. But again, circumstantial evidence will still be observed and admitted. Let's continue.
When a fire investigator is brought to the stand, and he'll be questioned about the DNA, he didn't do the swabs, the government says, but this is the person who saw the car that day in 2012 in January when he was called to Kid Cudi's house in Los Angeles. What do you expect? What information would the government want from a witness like that?
I think they're going to talk about the accelerant, right? The source of the fire, to prove that, it was indeed a Molotov cocktail, right? That's something that you need an expert to testify to. I don't think, it came out during Kid Cudi's testimony. It's not something that obviously he can opine to because he's not an expert in fire and what can cause a vehicle or anything like that to catch on fire. So you really do need that testimony from, a fire expert. So that's what I expect that to say.
So again, looking forward to another expert. We already had the clinical psychologist with yesterday's testimony, this past week's testimony. Expect to see a fire inspector, a fire chief, to be involved in this as a prosecution witness in regards to giving credence to the Molotov cocktail belonging to Diddy or a Diddy representative that bombed Kid Cudi's car. Let's continue.
And now, as I know, Capricorn Clark was on the stand today, and she was talking about, saying that she was kidnapped at one point, and then that is also one of those underlying crimes. You have the arson allegedly with Kid Cudi's car. To this point, how do you feel the government is doing? We still have a long way to go in this trial in proving that racketeering charge.
I think the government is there. And again, it's not your typical racketeering case, right? We talked about the mob. Normally you deal with racketeering with cartels or street gangs, but we are seeing them more and more in these sex trafficking cases. Obviously, R. Kelly's the best example, but the NXIVM sex cult case. Look, you have someone that has people working for him, right? That's Sean Combs. So the criminal enterprise doesn't have to be a criminal organization as long as it's a loose association of two or more people and someone's calling the shots. That's what's happening here. You have people that are working for Combs. So, we talked about arson. I think that's proven. But then you have kidnapping. Kidnapping isn't what some people think it is. You don't have to be, snatched off the middle of the street in broad daylight and thrown into a white van. You just have to prevent someone from moving through force or to force someone into a situation using force. So, you have the hotel incident. Well, the fact that you have Combs physically dragging Cassie Ventura in the hallway and not allowing her to leave, that is kidnapping. I mean, we've seen video evidence of kidnapping. Then you have Combs apparently upset with Clark because she didn't tell him about Cassie's relationship with Kid Cudi, and the fact that she called Cassie using a burner phone, warning her and Kid Cudi not to come to the house. And then apparently Combs took Clark to some club and held her there. That's kidnapping. That's evidence of kidnapping. So now you have 2 kidnapping events. At least we may hear about more. So you're just adding different elements of those RICO predicate acts as the government. I do think they have proven racketeering in this case.
So again, very good point raised by the expert lawyer here. With regards to Capricorn Clark's testimony and the fact when she was taken to a warehouse and put under a lie detector test, that's considered kidnapping because it was done against her will. So Diddy, that is another predicate act against him as for him being the head of a criminal organization. So we are, I mean, the evidence is mounting up against Diddy, unfortunately, depending on what side you're on. But, this is just one side of things. Remember, Diddy has to present his case. Diddy has the defense to prove again. And as stated by Beckerman and Kaufman on the TMZ Live Diddy in Court episode, with regards to the O.J. Simpson case, O.J. had a mountain of evidence against him, but yet the defense team, put up a fantastic defense led by Johnny Cochran, and his all-star team of defense lawyers. And it eventually, exonerated O.J. Simpson from his case. So we look forward to seeing what the defense has in store of a defense, for lack of a better word, of Diddy with regards to this prosecution from the U.S. Attorney's Office. Let's continue.
What more would you need to see if you were a juror at this point from the government? If a juror is maybe at this point like, okay, I've heard this, but we still have several weeks to go where the prosecution's going to lay out its case, where do you think it's going to go next?
What I would love to see if I were a juror in this case, or if I were prosecuting this case, are more videos. And apparently Combs took video of these freak-offs for his own sexual pleasure and to maintain control over the victims. If those videos exist, I would want to see them because video is the best evidence. And we know it's the best evidence because this case was all about that hotel surveillance video, both before the trial, during jury selection, and during the trial. That's what the government started with. Video doesn't lie, Chris. Witnesses can lie. Some of these witnesses are disgruntled exes, allegedly, maybe disgruntled employees, allegedly. Some of them have filed civil lawsuits. So they can potentially be biased. I'm not saying I agree with it, but this is the argument the defense is making. But video evidence, it doesn't lie. And apparently there's video from Combs's homes in LA and Miami. He allegedly had videos all throughout the house, hidden cameras. So to the extent that those videos exist, that's what I would want to see if I were a juror in this case.
Excellent point raised there by the expert lawyer here. Again, you would want to see more video evidence. That's the first and foremost. You would like to see more video evidence. I think what started this ball rolling indeed was the Diddy beating of Cassie Ventura at the Intercontinental Hotel in 2016. That's what really started the ball rolling here. That's what gave Cassie Ventura her $35 million. That's that's why we're here, for lack of a better word. That's why we are indeed here for this case. And if there are any more video evidence, especially of the freak offs, especially of the parties, especially of Diddy, being involved with sex workers and with Cassie being involved with those workers herself, I think that would really put a dent, and a serious dent, in the defense's case. But that remains to be seen, and we'll see where things go forward in the future, I wouldn't be surprised if they bring forth any such evidence in terms of their closing, or in terms of their further evidence in chief. Let's continue.
And we talked about the racketeering charge, and you believe at this point that the government's there. How about at sex trafficking at this point? I mean, there's been some very compelling testimony from what we've been told from our reporter in the courtroom. Just the emotion of Cassie's testimony was something that was incredibly emotional. At this point, is the government there as well on that charge?
Chris, I do believe the government is there. Maybe this is the former prosecutor in me, but sex trafficking, again, it's not human trafficking, right? There is sex that's consensual between adults, and there's non-consensual sex that involves force, fraud, or coercion. There has to be a commercial element, and we know there is because of the payment to the sex workers. And of course, the commercial element doesn't even have to be financial. It has to be just some benefit to individuals involved. And then there has to be an interstate component, which again, we know there is because people were flown from different states to participate in these sex acts. So really, sex trafficking comes down to that force or coercion. Do you believe that Cassie was coerced? I do, because someone that, takes so many drugs that she throws up during the freak off, someone who's forced to have sex while she's on her period or when she has a UTI, that is coerced, in my opinion. And you have Combs here, who has a history of violence directly towards Cassie. He has security. He has guns. That is enough force, in my opinion, for this to not be consensual sex, no matter how freaky it is between adults. And has crossed the line to sex trafficking, in my opinion. And yet, Don Hughes, the government's expert, who testified about the psychology of abuse and why victims stay and why they don't seek help and why they don't report it. So I think that was very compelling testimony as well.
So I think we're going to leave it there, ladies and gentlemen. I think that's excellent. I'm just trying to get the lawyer's name here because he deserves recognition. I think he's given expert I wouldn't say testimony, expert advice here in this matter. So let me see. Yes, hold on a second.
Another month at least. He is charged.
Just a second. Let me just get to it here.
Prosecutor and president of West Coast Trial Lawyers. Always great to have you on Law and Crime. Thanks for being here. So there's so much attention on this Porsche that was hit with a Molotov cocktail in 2012.
Threat. Well, I think there's a few ways you get there. Obviously, you would love if there was some...
There you go. Niyama Rahmani, wonderful expert reactions to the day's proceedings, the week's proceedings here with regards to the Diddy trial. And he deserves his flowers for this and expert. Well, and crime. Yes, indeed. So, Mr. Rahmani, thank you very much for his expertise on these issues. And again, it's to him it seems very compelling. The U.S. prosecution here, and remember, they have a 98% conviction record. These guys don't go into a case to lose or to speculate or to try to win. They are here to win, and it is to be seen that Mr. Rahmani is by Mr. Rahmani that the U.S. Attorney's Office is doing a wonderful job. The federal lawyers are doing a wonderful job here. Federal prosecutors, are here doing a wonderful job, and it has to be recognized. So we'll see what happens going forward. But again, the prosecution have a very, very serious case against P. Diddy Combs, but it remains to be seen what the defense will do in retort in terms of defending their client, Sean P. Diddy Combs. Let's get back to the main area here. We're just going back to the full cam, and it's. I hope you can see me. Yes, full camera. Oh, what happened there? Okay, we're back here. Yes, indeed. I hope you saw me there on Talk Live on IG and YouTube. On YouTube, I believe you saw the YouTube ceremony there. But anyways, But again, we are here to work out the kinks. Bad echo, hard to hear you. Okay, so I will keep that in mind. I will keep that in mind here. Yes. I will keep that in mind, ladies and gentlemen. Bad echo. So we will check that out, ladies and gentlemen. So thank you very much for that. There's an echo, bad echo, hard to hear you. So again, I will keep that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, and that's Patty 2 times. Thank you very much, Patty 2 times, for that. I will keep that in mind going forward, and we will recognize that and get that sorted out here on Talk Talk Live. So thank you very much for joining me here on Talk Talk Live. We're going to end it here, and we're going to be back on Thursday with a new show with regard to the Diddy trial, new recap show of the Diddy trial. Tomorrow night, we're going to have a little bit of our usual fare on Talk Talk Live here, so look out for listings on that. We're going to be talking about how indeed, well, relationship experts are giving red pill truths, but yet not, considering themselves to be red pills. So we'll get into that tomorrow night at Talk Live, live on IG, YouTube. We'll be here Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday this week. So thank you very much for joining me here at Talk Live. Look forward to seeing you then. And we're going to sign off for now. I don't know what's going on upstairs, but we're going to end it here. And thank you very much for joining me. And I look forward to seeing you very, very soon. I hope there's no disturbances going on up there. But we will move forward with things. Yes, indeed. Yes. Yeah. So we will get back to you here on Talk Live going forward. And look forward to seeing you tomorrow night on Talk Live with more of our usual fare. And then Thursday night, back to the Diddy trial. Those are our plans. Thank you very much for joining me here on Talk Live, live on IG, YouTube. Like, subscribe, comment on the road to 1,000 subscribers. And we'll be back tomorrow night with a new show. Look forward to seeing you then. And good night from Toronto. On IG. And yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And thank you very much for joining me here on Talk